So you got Frank in Scranton. How you doing?
Hi, guys. How you doing?
We're well.
Good. Mr. Dillahunty, Cowboy Wagner. Abcats is awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I'd just like to say, you guys don't do it right most of the time. You guys do it right all the time.
Oh, okay. Please. Oh, you.
Really? I mean, I'm being honest. Okay, but anyway, I don't want to take up any more time with praise and flattery, because even though it's well-deserved here, certain scientific theories, well respected by the scientific community, by the way, are just as valid as certain established religions. For example, string theory.
Well, okay. First of all, I think string theory is mislabeled as a theory. My understanding of it is that I don't think it qualifies as an actual theory yet. I think they've kind of co-opted that term a little bit. And I don't even know what my position is on it, if any. So,
yeah.
Okay, but
we know
you're
that it's
familiar with it a little bit, like this 10 dimensions of space, one dimension at a time?
I'm passingly familiar. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but
and then the best that I could say about it is that I know that a great many people in the field of physics reject it outright too. So it's not something that has universal scientific support, to say the very least.
So the note here next to your name is that the host and audience should be just as skeptical of certain scientific claims as they are of certain theological claims.
Exactly.
And we are. So
yes, we agree with that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about the belief that our galaxy contains, as Carl Sagan used to say, 100 billion stars? I mean, doesn't that sound just as rounded off as, like, say...
Oh, well, it's not meant. It's not meant to be an actual. It's not like there could.
It's an estimate.
He's saying there's not 100 billion and 4. It's not meant to be an exact number. When we say that the universe is, or the Earth's 4.5 billion years old and the universe is 13.7 billion years old, that doesn't. This reminds me of the old joke. This guy's giving a tour of a museum, and it's an older gentleman, and he's walking people around. And they get to a dinosaur, and somebody says, "Hey, how old are those bones?" And he says, "Well, they're 63 million years, 63 million 14 years and 5 weeks." And they're like, "How did you date that like that?" "Well, I've been here 14 years and 5 weeks, and they told me it was 63 million years old when I worked here." That's when we say there's 100 billion stars in the galaxy. Of course, we're giving an estimate. It's not like we've actually counted them.
Yeah.
Okay, but is the distance from the Earth to the Sun an estimate as legitimate as the 100 billion stars?
It is around.
It's around 93 million miles. Yeah.
Because there's a thing called perihelion and aphelion, where the Earth's orbit around the Sun is an ellipse, right? We know that. So there are times when the Earth is closer to the Sun than farther away, and so the 93 million mile figure is designed to be sort of an average. It's a mean distance. And it's just there. Yeah, I mean, that's very common. People do that all the time. You do average numbers just because they're easy to reference. But if you look it up on just Wikipedia, it'll tell you, about the Earth's, the distance from the Earth to the Sun, and astronomical units, and what they mean and how they're done. And so there's all kinds of shorthand. But the people who come up with these figures know this, and they're very clear about that these are estimated figures.
Would you say that Wikipedia is a valid source, though?
Well, it's for general use.
If it has references that you can go out and look further. I'm not. See, your point was originally about we should be skeptical of scientific claims as well. We are, but what you're objecting to are things that don't make any sense.
Yeah, they're very hair-splitting details about things.
It's not like I have this firm belief that there's exactly 100 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. I mean, that's not it at all. There seems to be like a gross conceptual error here.
Yeah.
Okay, because I said I am a theist, but I'm more so of you say free thinkers, but are free thinkers only people who think just like you?
No.
No.
Well, there are disagreements amongst freethinkers. I don't know.
Oh, well, believe me, I know a lot of freethinkers that I do not see eye to eye on a great many things. But you know what? That's what it means to be a free thinker, is that you think for yourself about issues. And whatever it is that is meaningful to you. You form your own ideas.
Right.
Now,
exactly.
those ideas may be good, or they may be bad. They may be founded on the solid facts, or they may be founded on informed opinion or uninformed opinion. But
setting aside free thinking and just talking about, for example, skepticism. I have very specific views about skepticism. And that doesn't mean that everybody who identifies as a skeptic necessarily agrees. I for one, hold the view that skepticism necessarily leads to atheism, and I think I can demonstrate that. And that there are a number of skeptics who don't think that, and it baffles me. And I'd love to, have a conversation as to why they think that is, because somebody is misusing terms. Because to me, the proper application of skepticism does lead to positions.
In the same way that isn't a theist as valid as, let's say, a Gnostic atheist? Because I went to your Iron Cherry, it's an excellent site, and it talks about the difference between a agnostic atheist and a Gnostic atheist. And wouldn't
it's
Gnostic
agnostic
atheist be just as, I don't want to say foolish, but as a theist?
Potentially. It depends on your definition of knowledge. And that's, we're like way out in left field here. But when it comes to, isn't a theist just as valid? I mean, everything about the terminology and everything about what you're communicating is just like a half step off. Theism is this position that a God exists. And my position is that a critical examination of the evidence has not provided us with sufficient evidence to justify that belief. Therefore, you cannot be rationally justified if you're a theist. Unless, you would need to be able to demonstrate some evidence that nobody's been able to demonstrate.
Well, wouldn't somebody also be lacking sufficient evidence to be a Gnostic, period? Whether they be a Gnostic theist, Gnostic atheist?
As I said, that depends entirely on what you mean by what the definition of knowledge is, and it's not. It's not even a concern. I don't really care whether or not somebody claims to know something. What I care is whether or not they claim to believe it, because we don't wait until we have knowledge to act. We act in accordance with our beliefs. And so knowledge is a subset of belief. In some philosophical circles, it's been defined as justified true belief. I have my objections to that one. I've run with the definition where you can believe things to varying degrees of certainty, and knowledge, in a colloquial sense, is belief to such a high degree of certainty that it would be worldview altering to discover that it's wrong. But I don't care if you say you know. I mean, if you say you know something, all you've really told me is, I really, 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 really believe this. And all I care about is whether or not you actually believe it and whether or not that belief is justified.
Well, I'm surprised in the scientific community that certain people create their own definition of the word nothing, like Lawrence Krauss, for example, whom you recommended.
It's not him creating his own definition of nothing. The fact is that in different circles, words have been used in different ways. Have you looked in a dictionary and seen like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4? Those are different usages of a term.
Of course.
Yeah. It's not like somebody invented this.
For example, the word theory. One objection that you will hear anti-evolutionists and creationists make to evolution is they will say, yes, but it's only a theory. And of course, what they misunderstand is that in everyday life, for example, theory, if you're just using it in a colloquial sense, means I have a feeling about something, or I'm just guessing here, but ... But in the scientific world, they don't use theory in that. That's not what theory means. A theory in science is not a word you get to call your idea until you can back it up with such a solid body of evidence that if your peers review your work, they're able independently to come to the same conclusions that you are. And so in science, a theory has to be a very, very solidly supported, evidentially supported idea, which is much, much different than, if you and I were just talking and say, I have a theory about why this, my favorite, baseball team sucked this season, or why, it's different from I'm just guessing in science. So it's the same thing as I understand in the world of physics, for example. Nothing doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as when you and I as laymen talk about nothing, and the mathematical application of nothing that Lawrence Krauss is applying is something that is understood in physics and not just a thing that he's pulling out of his hat.
And it doesn't matter at all, because words serve a purpose. They are tools to convey meaning. And you can make up whatever word you want, or you can use whatever word you want, as long as you are clear about what you mean in that context. And so it's not that physicists are just running around co-opting nothing or changing the meaning of nothing. They could have used any number of words, as long as the communication is effective. And when they're communicating with peers, it is. It's when you get outside of the localized jargon that people tend to get confused about those things.
Of course, but don't you think that maybe debates would run smoother if everybody agreed on semantics and terminology right from the get-go?
Of course,
I mean, you
but
encourage that, right?
of course, but this isn't about debates. This isn't about the public communication of information. This is about people doing work in a particular field and having a particular usage for a term. There's not confusion really amongst them.
And if they're in order to persuade an uninformed public about their ideas, if for example, if you're a physicist and you want to convey your ideas to a lay public who doesn't have the math, doesn't have the background to understand what you're talking about, if you launch into all of your professional jargon and shop talk, then you as the physicist, if you clearly convey what I mean, but when I'm saying this, here's what I mean. When I'm saying that, here's what I mean. Here's what I'm referring to, and you can make that understood by your audience, then that's really all you need to do. Right.
Yeah, well, yippee-ki-yay, I understand that 100%.
Okay, so what's the problem?
But nobody has to accept something that hasn't been observed. Would you agree with that?
That has.
Okay, see, here's another thing, Frank, where what you're saying is like a half a step out in left field, and I don't mean that as an insult. Okay. Nobody has to accept anything ever. There's no requirement that you accept anything under any conditions. So when you and so when you say nobody has to accept anything that hasn't been observed, nobody has to accept anything that has been observed either. So I mean,
yes.
Sure. So when we're talking about this, I want to get to what and there's other callers waiting too, but I wanted to get to what your actual objection is, because you're kind of like half a step outside of what we're talking about at almost every turn.
But accepting evolution would be an argument from authority, wouldn't it?
No.
Because it's never been observed. I mean...
Yes, it has.
Actually, it has.
We're talking about the Planck wall. I mean, going back to the Planck wall, except that's theoretical talk, theoretical physics, just like string theory.
And that has nothing to do with evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
So you're now conflating different fields and different ideas in science.
Yeah, it's just really kind of bizarre, because now you're talking about, as far as I can tell, I think you're talking about Planck time.
To 10 to the negative 43 seconds, exactly.
Which doesn't have anything to do with evolution of the observation. That is the limit to which we can go back to the origins of the universe.
Yeah. And that's an entirely
which has nothing to do with evolution. Evolution, you're talking about cosmology now. You've jumped sciences and you didn't even realize it.
See, I think people make their terminology more clear, it would be more easier for lay people to grasp.
No, it's not about it being unclear. It's about being uninformed. I have no confusion about the difference between cosmology and evolution. Evolution has nothing to do with the origin of the universe. Evolution is the the science of the diversity of life after life has arisen, which is still long after we've left the origin of the universe.
Well, then what would you consider abiogenesis? Is it a term of cosmology?
Abiogenesis is the label for life arising from non-living matter, which is something that is required prior to evolution, but it also has nothing to do with cosmology and the origins of the universe. The origins of the universe, cosmology, the origins of life, biogenesis, abiogenesis, the evolution of life after it's arisen, evolution, really simple.
Yeah, there are a lot of different fields here you're conflating, and I think that a lot of your problems that you're trying to express to us here have to do with just being confused about exactly the subjects you're talking about and what each one refers to, what each one means, what each idea, the realm of human knowledge that each one explores. And so because you have these kind of confusions and conflations going on, you're unsure about this is what's led to your whole line of questions.
Yeah, and it's funny because
that's scientists, when you say equally, because there's some scientists who say that there was something before the Big Bang, and then some say there wasn't because there was no time. I mean, it's just so confused. Scientists are. I mean, it's just
you're talking about an area where we don't have an explanation, and it may be nonsensical to talk about before the Big Bang.
Yeah, see, here's Frank.
Nonsensical, but isn't that a way of avoiding the question? To say it's nonsensical?
No, to say we don't know, we don't currently have a sufficient understanding of that, is not a way of avoiding the question.
And
it's a way of avoiding a false answer.
Yeah, and the way in which scientists do resolve the questions for which we don't have answers is they argue things out. They study their fields. They look at evidence. Some will reach, scientist A will reach one conclusion. Scientist B will reach another. They will debate. They will argue. They will discuss. They will write papers. They will submit them to journals. They'll get published or rejected, and then a whole new round of debate. This is how science. This is the self-correcting process of the scientific method that helps facts be understood.
Science doesn't make claims about truth. It's not about discovering truth. It's about gaining an understanding, the best possible understanding of reality based on the available evidence.
And it's not.
That's it.
And it's not. Citing scientific ideas is not an argument from authority, because a scientific idea is not accepted simply because Mr. Prominent Scientist says this is true.
Yeah, it's accepted based on the weight of the evidence.
Right. Mr. Prominent Scientist has to show his work, and his work has to hold up. Otherwise, his ideas will not be accepted, no matter how big of an authority he may be in his field. Authorities in scientific fields can still be wrong. They know this, their peers know this, and the whole methodology of science.
And I'll let you get to this. I just want to point out one quick thing. The fallacy of appeal to an authority is appealing to an authority that's not an actual authority. If you're citing actual authorities, recognizing expertise, that's not a fallacy. Doesn't mean they can't be wrong, but it's not a fallacy. Go ahead.
Okay, all I was just saying is that, so what you're saying is, I'm trying to understand, is that science follows where the evidence leads, as Baker has said many times?
Yes.
Baker has said that. I've heard him say that, and I do agree. But the other thing is that what I don't understand is that you have all these answers like that, but
no.
When you feel more comfortable, like in the Northeast or Northwest instead of in the Bible Belt South, really?
Hang on. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, you're in Bible Belt redneck country. You atheists, wouldn't you feel more comfortable in the Northeast or Northwest?
Frank,
I mean, come on.
Frank, first of all, somehow or another we jumped topics. You went from an assertion that we know things, and I reject that. The claim you're not claiming it, and then you went to, wouldn't we be more comfortable in the Northeast?
Yeah,
and we're in the Bible Belt redneck area. Well, first of all, you don't have the first clue what Austin is, because Austin is this liberal bastion. It's not Texas. Second of all,
it's not in Texas.
It's in Texas.
The capital of Texas. So now,
Frank.
You said that's not Texas.
Frank, I said Austin.
Frank, you're
please
being so
stop. Everybody stop. It's a problem with the phones.
Yeah.
Frank, I said Austin is not Texas. Do you understand kind of metaphoric, hyperbolic language? What I mean is your typical view of Texas being the red state, Bible Belt thing. That's not what Austin is. Austin is the liberal, let's smoke weed and get naked town. It is the let's keep Austin weird town. It is not, I'm simply saying that where I live is not where you imagine that I live. But second of all, how dare you insult rednecks as an actual redneck to some extent. I'm very comfortable where I am. By the way, boots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got my boots on.
And in any event, what's it got to do with anything?
And this entire conversation about where we live, what the hell does it have to do with anything?
Yes.
You know where I'd rather live? You know where I'd rather live? I'd rather live in a world where people base their ideas and their beliefs on evidence and make an effort to actually understand a subject before they call in to show that they don't know what they're talking about.
Please, no ad hominem attacks, sir. Please.
No, we're not.
No. Listen here, Frank. That was not an ad hominem attack.
Ad hominem.
Yeah, it was not an ad hominem attack. It was talking about what kind of world I would actually live in. It was honest. And you're the one who's sitting here talking about where we'd prefer to live and redneck this. By the way,
I mean that as a slur. Again,
by the way,
semantics.
By the way, another telephone problem. Again, an ad hominem fallacy is a problem. An ad hominem attack is not a problem. If somebody's a dumbass and I say they're a dumbass and they don't like it, that's too bad. I'm offering my opinion about what they're saying. I'm not assessing their entire character. I am a dumbass on certain things at certain times. I'm a moron, an idiot, a fool. And so I will also acknowledge that not only am I these things, but other people are too.
No, that's not. Say it ain't so, please.
Okay.
Say it ain't so. Seriously.
Goodbye. Thanks for calling.